Hi, and welcome back to Tatparya Books. Today we are going to talk about Walter Isaacson's biography of Leonardo da Vinci. You see, I've been waiting for a great book about Leonardo da Vinci to come out for quite some time. And this book came out in 2017, and I've been waiting to read it ever since. Back when it came out in 2017, and I had known that Isaacson had written about Da Vinci after he wrote about Steve Jobs and Einstein, it just felt natural that he would go to Da Vinci after Steve Jobs and Einstein in that list of genius. But back in 2017, I first started listening to the audiobook and very quickly realized that the audiobook was missing something. And I constantly had to refer back to the images that the book was talking about to be able to get the essence of the book. So, earlier this year, I finally managed to get the paperback version of the book and I started reading it a few weeks ago. So, how did it go? Let's find out. Leonardo da Vinci is, of course, most popular for having painted the Mona Lisa. And one of the common things I've heard people say about the Mona Lisa is that it's no big deal. Some of them are people who've actually visited the Louvre in Paris to see the Mona Lisa. And after having been through the entire museum and having waited in line for more than 2 hours, when they finally get there, they are disappointed. It's probably something to do with the size of the painting. It's surprisingly small, just over 2 feet in length. And it feels like the size of the painting is contrary to the sheer huge reputation that it has. I think this was done on purpose. Leonardo purposefully made Mona Lisa small because he wanted you to look closely, to look at the fine detail. Notice her eyes. Notice her luminescent and slightly grading skin tone. Notice the folds of her dress. Notice the play of shadow on the folds of her dress. Notice the geography behind her. Notice how the blurry background makes her stand out. And on and on. It was as if Leonardo was pouring in his life's work into this painting of a merchant's wife. He was making this painting for the last 16 years of his life. And in Isaacson's book, the chapter on Mona Lisa comes close to the end. And only then do you actually see this painting as a culmination of an extraordinary life. A life that I think can teach us something about how we could live in today's world. This book is a pretty straightforward telling of Leonardo's life. It starts with his birth and his childhood in Vinci and then goes on all the way up to his death in Paris. It's rich in detail thanks a lot to the amount of notebooks that Leonardo left, but it also spends a lot of time talking to us about the context of his life, which is 14th and 15th century Italy and the people that he met, as much as it talks about the personality that was Leonardo. And this is not an easy personality to describe because Leonardo's interests went into a lot of topics. Art, of course, but also mechanics, the anatomy of birds, the flight of birds, the anatomy of animals, anatomy of humans, workings of a human heart, workings of a human eye, optics, workings of shadows and interplay of shadows on different objects, mathematics and 3D objects, and the Vitruvian man and the spacing of human proportions, and so on and on. Each little interest or obsessive interest of Leonardo's requires its own chapter and space, and this could have easily become very boring, but Isaacson somehow manages to make it an enjoyable read. And as you go through the book and you go through the life of Leonardo, it's hard not to be awed. Leonardo was somebody who approached each one of his interests by harnessing the power of human inquisitiveness. If he wanted to understand something in mechanics, he would draw and build the thing that he wanted to try. If he wanted to understand how muscles worked, he would draw and make copious notes and approach this topic with a fresh perspective. He asked basic questions and never took anything for granted. And he experimented again and again until his own inquisitiveness was satisfied. And if it required him to foray into an adjacent topic to be able to better understand the thing that he wants to understand, he would do so. For example, when Leonardo was obsessed about finding out how the human heart worked, he brought to work his knowledge of spirals and fluid dynamics, and then through this process was able to discover how a human heart valve worked. Then, to be able to test out his theories, he made a glass replica of a heart using a bull's heart as a model, and then using that and filling it with water to see how water ebbs and flows through the heart. Now think about it for a second. Here is a man who's not a surgeon, who's not a physician, and yet spends time enough to build a glass replica of the heart and use it to test out his theories. This is probably why in this book, time and again you read that Leonardo was 100 years or 200 years or 300 years before his time in making some very specific discoveries. We know this because he left copious notes and diagrams in his notebooks talking about his discoveries and giving almost treatise level detail for his discoveries. And all this is not including or not even going into his art. For it was art that tied all of his obsessions together. Drawing helped him make sense of the world, and he looped back his learnings of the world into his drawing. That famous smile of Mona Lisa's is because Leonardo spent time trying to understand how a human smile works, what muscles help a human smile, dissecting and looking at it, understanding optics to understand how ever so lightly there is a gradation in the shadows that we make when we smile, understanding space to be able to put the smile at a place in the painting so that you look at the spot that the artist wants you to look at. And as I began to understand this, I also began to understand how Leonardo can help us live in today's world. You see, his world was no different from ours. It too was going through a knowledge explosion thanks to the invention of books. For the first time in human history, anybody who had an inquiry or an inquisitive mind could go to the market and get a book about that subject and look it up. It allowed people like Leonardo to follow his obsessions, but he went further. He then followed it up by talking to experts and experimenting with that particular theory again and again until he understood it. He was no mere consumer of knowledge. He was somebody who would use knowledge and then experiment with it. Experimentation and observation thus became a very important factor in how he handled knowledge. And this helped him not to be attention deficient. Leonardo also then used his art to go beyond his knowledge. Using his imagination, he would recreate spaces or recreate things the way he understood it and went a step beyond. Let us talk about the physical book itself. The cover, like most Walter Isaacson biographies, is a close-up of the main subject. In this case, it is the famous red drawing of an older Leonardo set against a white background, and this white makes the book seem lighter. At 600 pages long, this is a pretty heavy book to carry. It needed to be heavy because it has a lot of illustrations in the book. Illustrations, photos, and drawings. Walter Isaacson actually has a lot of drawings included from Leonardo's notebooks, and these are things that I referred back to over and over again when I was reading the book. So I didn't mind the size of the book because it included the illustrations. If you haven't guessed it already, I really enjoyed reading this book. Actually, Walter Isaacson is a competent writer of biographies of huge personalities. Cue Albert Einstein and Steve Jobs. He does this job without hyperbole or generalization. But with Leonardo, he does something more. He presents a very large canvas of a life with care and detail. And Leonardo would have liked that. Thank you for watching Tatparya Books. If you like this video, please click like and feel free to leave me a comment. And if you want to watch more such videos, please hit the subscribe button. I look forward to reading your comments, and if you think there is a book that you want me to review, please leave a comment in the comment section below. Until next time, bye-bye.